Rain had a way of making the city's glass towers look colder, sharper, like they were designed to cut people down. Elena's heels clicked against the marble steps of the Aurelius Hotel as flashes from photographers exploded in her face. She hadn't been invited to tonight's charity gala, but she was here anyway, because walking away from certain battles wasn't her style anymore. The moment she stepped inside, the hum of polite conversation shifted. Heads turned. Whispers slithered through the crowd like smoke. "Isn't that her? The ex-wife. I thought she disappeared after the divorce." Elena lifted her chin, her long black dress pooling elegantly at her feet. If they expected her to crumble under their stares, they'd be disappointed. And then she saw him. Adrian Kane, CEO of Kane Global. Her ex-husband, 6'2" of tailored power in a charcoal suit, speaking to investors like he owned the air they breathed. His gaze swept the room lazily, until it landed on her. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. His expression didn't change, but his grip on his champagne glass tightened, the muscle in his jaw ticking once. Before she could look away, a silvery laugh cut through the tension. A tall, willowy woman, Isla Moreno, Adrian's rumored fiancée, glided toward her. "Oh my," Isla purred, voice dripping with false sweetness. "I didn't know this was a charity for the forgotten exes of billionaires." The crowd tittered. Cameras clicked. Elena kept her expression neutral, but her pulse thundered in her ears. Isla's smile sharpened. "Careful, darling. This isn't your world anymore." With a flick of her wrist, her champagne glass tipped. Cold liquid soaked through Elena's dress, the sharp scent of citrus and alcohol filling her senses. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone snickered. For a moment, Elena said nothing. Not because she was humiliated, she'd been through worse, but because she was calculating. Then, slowly, she set her clutch down, took the microphone from the startled event host, and stepped onto the small stage. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady despite the damp fabric clinging to her skin. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I feel compelled to remind everyone why this gala exists, to raise money for children's cancer research." Murmurs stirred. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "So," she continued, her gaze sweeping over the elite audience, "I'll start the evening off with a donation of $1 million. A stunned silence fell. Isla's painted smile faltered. Someone dropped their fork. "And to the lady who helped me remember why I'm here, thank you. Your champagne was as tasteless as your manners." The room erupted, not with applause, but with whispers, flashes, and the unmistakable weight of shifting opinions. Elena stepped down from the stage, reclaiming her clutch, every movement precise and unhurried. She didn't look at Adrian as she passed him, but she felt his gaze like heat against her skin. By the time she reached the exit, the rain had returned, pattering softly against the glass doors. She stepped outside, letting the cool droplets wash away the sting of champagne. "Impressive," a deep voice said behind her. She turned. Adrian stood there, holding an umbrella over both of them. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they were darker than she remembered. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "And yet, here I am," she replied. "Don't worry, I won't embarrass you again. Not unless someone earns it." His lips twitched, almost a smile, almost a threat. "We'll see about that." She stepped away, letting the rain hit her bare shoulders. "I'm not yours to see about anymore, Adrian." As she walked toward the curb, a wave of nausea twisted in her stomach. Not from nerves. Not from the champagne. From the secret she'd been carrying for 6 weeks. And she knew sooner or later, Adrian Kane was going to find out. The rain hadn't stopped since the gala. It clung to the city like a curse, turning every streetlight into a blurred smear of gold. Elena sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe, her coffee untouched, her phone buzzing every few seconds with messages she refused to open. Her donation at the gala had gone viral overnight. Not because people cared about the charity, but because she had made it. Elena Kane's $1 million revenge. The headlines were gleeful, poisonous. The door opened with a chime, and a hush fell over the room. She didn't have to look up to know who it was. Adrian Kane didn't belong in a place like this. The cafe's warm lighting and chipped wooden tables looked almost shabby next to his tailored charcoal coat and the cold steel of his presence. "You made the front page," he said, sliding into the seat opposite her without asking. His voice was low, almost conversational, but his eyes held that unreadable intensity she remembered too well. She kept her gaze on her coffee. "I'm sure you've had worse scandals. Not ones involving my ex-wife dropping $1 million in front of my investors." She let out a short laugh. "I didn't know they belonged to you. I was donating to the cause, not to your reputation." "You knew exactly what you were doing," he countered, leaning forward slightly. "You walked into my world last night and reminded everyone you're not some ghost I erased." She met his gaze then, steady and unflinching. "Maybe I'm done being erased." A beat of silence. Outside, the rain beat harder against the glass. Adrian's phone buzzed, but he ignored it. "You don't have that kind of money, Elena." "So, where's it coming from?" She arched a brow. "That's my business." "Everything about you," he said softly, "is my business." That old arrogance, the one that used to make her heart race and her blood boil, flared in his tone. She set her cup down, leaning in just enough for him to catch the steel in her eyes. "Not anymore." Before he could reply, a commotion broke out by the door. A delivery boy in a rain-soaked jacket stumbled in, holding a wrapped portfolio. "Miss Elena Kane," he called. She stood, accepted the package, and slipped a bill into his palm before he could leave. "What's that?" Adrian asked. She ignored him, untying the twine. Inside was a series of architectural plans, photographs, and a signed contract, her first major project since the divorce. A community arts center, funded by a quiet benefactor who believed in her vision. Adrian's gaze swept the papers. "You're building this?" "Yes," she said, sliding the contract into her bag. "And last night's pledge was my opening move. I knew the publicity would force other donors to match it." "You used my gala to launch your own project," he said, voice low with something between disbelief and grudging admiration. "I used the only weapon I had left," she replied. "My name. The one you gave me, the one you thought you could bury." For the first time, something flickered in his expression, a spark of respect? Interest? She couldn't tell, but it made her stomach tighten. "You've changed," he said finally. "No," she corrected. "I just stopped waiting for you to see me." The air between them crackled with the weight of everything unsaid. Nights spent alone, words swallowed, wounds left to rot. Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at it, and for a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped. Her name, on his screen, paired with a single line from someone else. "She's hiding something." He looked back at her, his gaze sharper now, more dangerous. "What are you not telling me, Elena?" Her pulse spiked, but she kept her expression calm. "Plenty. But you'll have to earn the answers this time." He leaned back, studying her like a chess player staring at a board mid-game. "Then I guess the game's on." Outside, thunder rolled over the city. And Elena knew Adrian Kane wasn't going to walk away this time. The boardroom smelled faintly of leather and money. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, glass gleaming beneath the pale winter sun. Elena had never liked Kane Global's headquarters. Too cold, too polished, like everything inside had been stripped of warmth. Unfortunately, she was here. Her Arts Center project had unexpectedly landed a major corporate sponsor, and that sponsor was Kane Global. She had planned to send an assistant. But then the message had come from the CEO's office himself. Meeting is mandatory. Now, as she stepped inside, every head at the long glass table turned toward her. Except his. Adrian sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled to his forearms, focused on a document. "Miss Kane," he said without looking up, voice like steel wrapped in silk. "It's Ms. Vance now," she corrected, taking the seat furthest from him. A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Noted." The meeting was supposed to be routine, sign agreements, discuss timelines. But it became something else the moment a man she didn't recognize stepped into the room. Tall, charming, with a neatly trimmed beard, he moved with an easy confidence. His eyes found Elena immediately. Daniel Holt, he introduced himself, extending a hand. Project Liaison. Elena shook it, smiling politely. Nice to meet you. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught the subtle shift in Adrian's posture. His pen stilled. His gaze lifted, sharp as a blade. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that she caught the faint scent of cedar and clean linen. I've been following your work for a while, he said. This art center, what you're building, it's exactly what the community needs. Adrian's voice cut in, cool and precise. Let's stay on topic, Mr. Holt. Daniel smiled, unbothered. We are on topic. Ms. Vance is the project. The air tightened like a drawn bowstring. Elena pretended not to notice the storm brewing at the head of the table. They moved through budgets and architectural plans, but Adrian's attention wasn't on the numbers. Every time Daniel leaned toward her, every time she laughed softly at one of his remarks, Adrian's jaw flexed. When the meeting ended, Daniel offered to walk her to the elevator. She accepted. They made it halfway down the hall before Adrian's voice echoed after them. Elena. A word. Daniel glanced between them. I'll wait downstairs. The door to Adrian's office shut with a soft, deliberate click. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets. The city sprawled beneath him. You're enjoying yourself, he said without turning. She crossed her arms. If you mean speaking to a man without asking your permission, then yes. His head turned slightly, eyes catching hers. Be careful. Her laugh was brittle. Of what? You're not my husband anymore, Adrian. You don't get to be jealous. He took a slow step toward her. Jealous? That implies I think he has a chance. She met him halfway, refusing to be the one to back down. Maybe he does. Silence crackled between them, charged and dangerous. His gaze dipped briefly to her lips before snapping back to her eyes. You're playing a game you don't understand, he murmured. I understand perfectly, she replied, turning toward the door. You just don't like that the rules aren't yours anymore. Her hand was on the handle when his voice stopped her. I know you're hiding something. She froze. When she glanced back, his expression was unreadable, but his tone was lethal. And I'll find out what it is. She walked out without answering, but her pulse was pounding. Because the truth was, the secret inside her wasn't just about her anymore. And if Adrian discovered she was carrying his child, she had no idea how far he'd go to claim them both. The rain came down in silver sheets, turning the city into a blur of wet glass and flickering neon. Elena kept her head low, one hand shielding her face, the other pressed protectively against her coat-covered stomach. She had been careful. She had been so careful. But apparently, Adrian Kane was better at uncovering things than she was at hiding them. She realized at the moment she stepped into the private clinic's dimly lit lobby. He was there, leaning casually against the marble reception desk, dark suit immaculate despite the weather, eyes cold and sharp as winter ice. I had a feeling you'd come here, he said, straightening. Her heart punched against her ribs. You followed me? Call it verification, he replied, stepping closer. I like to confirm my suspicions before I act. She glanced toward the nurse, who was suddenly fascinated with the paperwork in her hands. This is none of your business, Adrian. Everything about you is my business. His voice lowered, dangerously soft. Especially when it involves my child. Her breath hitched. For a moment, she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. How long have you known? She asked finally, her voice brittle. Long enough to be insulted that you thought you could keep it from me. He took another step, closing the space between them. Is that why you left? So, you could raise our child without me. She met his gaze, fire sparking in her own. I left because you only knew how to destroy me, Adrian. And I wasn't going to let you destroy them too. The words landed between them like a gunshot. His jaw tightened, but his voice, when it came, was smooth. Too smooth. I don't intend to destroy anyone. But if you think I'll let my child grow up without my name, my protection, and everything that's mine, his gaze dropped briefly to her stomach. You're wrong. I don't need your protection. I need my peace. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, quickly masked. Peace doesn't keep the world from tearing you apart, Elena. I do. She shook her head, stepping back toward the clinic door. No, Adrian. You keep me from breathing. She was almost outside when his hand caught her wrist. The grip wasn't painful, but it was unyielding. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous promise. I will give you whatever you want. Money, power, security. Hell, I'll put a $10 million diamond on your finger, if that's what it takes. His eyes burned into hers. But you will not shut me out of my child's life. The rain roared beyond the glass doors, but in the clinic's quiet lobby, his words felt deafening. For one fragile second, she almost believed him. Almost believed that what she saw in his eyes wasn't just control, but something rawer, more human. But she had learned long ago that believing in Adrian Kane was the fastest way to drown. She pulled her wrist free. You can't buy redemption, Adrian. And she stepped into the rain, leaving him standing alone in the sterile, too bright light. The crystal chandeliers shimmered like 1,000 captured stars, their light bouncing off champagne glasses and glittering gowns. Laughter swirled through the grand ballroom of the Marquis Hotel, mingling with the soft strains of a live orchestra. Elena had planned to leave early. She wasn't here for society gossip or the staged photo ops. The charity gala was business, a chance to secure donations for her nonprofit, nothing more. But the moment she stepped into the room, she felt him. Adrian Kane stood near the center of the crowd, dressed in a midnight black tuxedo that made the already imposing man look untouchable. His gaze found her instantly, and the hum of voices around her seemed to fade. He was smiling for the benefit of the press, but his eyes, those unreadable, storm-gray eyes, were locked entirely on her. She wanted to turn away. She should have turned away. Instead, her feet carried her toward the silent battle that had been brewing for weeks. Mrs. Kane. His voice was low, mocking the formality even as it wrapped around her like silk. Or is it Miss now? Her chin lifted. It's just Elena. His smirk didn't reach his eyes. I hear your nonprofit is doing well. Enough to raise a child alone. The words were like ice water down her spine. He'd said it loud enough for the nearby reporters to hear, though their curious glances were masked behind polite smiles. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you can corner me here? In front of cameras? He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. Not corner. Claim. Her stomach twisted. I'm not yours to claim anymore, Adrian. Then explain why, he said, his voice a velvet threat. You haven't told the father of your child that he's the father. The air between them tightened. The words were quiet, but they hit like a detonation. She felt the ripple, nearby conversations faltering, eyes subtly shifting toward them. You're making a scene, she warned. Good, he said simply. Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and produced a small, black velvet box. He opened it, revealing a diamond so large it caught every beam of chandelier light and shattered it into 100 rainbows. Gasps rose from the onlookers. This, he said, his voice carrying now, is $10 million worth of what I should have given you long ago. Not because of the child, though I will be in their life, but because I should never have let you go. The orchestra had stopped playing. The entire ballroom was watching. Elena's pulse pounded in her ears. She should have been furious. She was furious. But beneath the humiliation, the spectacle, the arrogance, there was something raw in his eyes. Something that didn't fit the man she had divorced. She swallowed hard. You think money erases what you did? You think one stone can rebuild what you broke? His jaw flexed. No. But it's a start. The room held its breath. Elena stared at him for one long, agonizing moment, then closed the velvet box and placed it gently back in his hand. Her voice was steady when she spoke. My child will know their father, but they will also know their mother never sold herself for a diamond. She turned and walked away, the crowd parting like water. Behind her, Adrian remained frozen in place, the box heavy in his hand, the taste of defeat bitter on his tongue. But in his chest, something dangerous burned. Because for the first time, Adrian Kane realized he might not just be fighting for his child, He might be fighting for the only woman he'd ever truly loved. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and red as Elena stepped out of the hotel and into the waiting car. Her chest was tight, not from the cold, but from the weight of every pair of eyes that had followed her as she walked away from Adrian. Her hand rested protectively over her abdomen. "You're safe," she told herself. "We're safe." But the truth was, she wasn't sure anymore. Adrian didn't leave the gala right away. He stood frozen in the echo of her rejection, the unopened diamond box heavy in his pocket. For the first time in years, he felt powerless, and that feeling scared him more than losing a multi-million-dollar deal ever could. When he finally strode out into the night, the rain hit his face like needles. His driver had been instructed to follow Elena's car discreetly. He told himself it wasn't obsession, it was concern. But deep down, he knew it was both. Inside her apartment, Elena kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch. The baby had been restless lately, movement sharper, as if sensing her tension. Her phone buzzed. Private number. She didn't need to check to know. "Adrian, I'm not in the mood. You need to see a doctor. Now." His voice was urgent, hard. Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? I saw you in the ballroom. You looked pale, and when you walked away." "Stop. You don't get to act like you care now." "Elena." She hung up. Her stomach cramped suddenly, sharp and unexpected. She doubled over, one hand gripping the arm of the couch. The room swam. Adrian's car screeched to a halt outside her building. He didn't remember telling the driver to stop, he just knew something was wrong. He bounded up the stairs two at a time, pounding on her door. No answer. He found the spare key still hidden above the frame, right where she'd kept it when they were married. When he opened the door, the sight hit him like a blow. Elena, pale and shaking, clutching her abdomen. "Don't," she gasped as he rushed forward. "I'm fine." "You're not fine," he snapped, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Her protest was weak, her breath uneven. "Adrian, put me down." "Not a chance." His voice was low, controlled, but his heart was thundering. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Adrian didn't let go of her hand while the doctor examined her. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the doctor spoke. "She needs rest. The baby's under stress." If she pushes herself any further, he didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Adrian's jaw tightened. What does she need?
Calm.
Stability. No emotional distress. The doctor glanced between them, clearly sensing the tension. Elena turned her face away, embarrassed by the tears threatening to spill. When they were alone, Adrian sat beside her bed, his voice low but unyielding. "You're coming home with me." She laughed, bitter. "And what? Live under your glass ceiling again? Watch you leave every morning to run your empire while I fade into the background?" He leaned closer, his eyes locked on hers.
"No."
"This time, you'll be the only thing I don't leave behind." Her heart skipped, but she forced herself to meet his gaze without flinching. "I don't trust you, Adrian." His hand brushed against her cheek, hesitant for once. "Then let me earn it, even if it takes the rest of my life." She turned away, but not before he caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. That night, as the city outside pulsed with rain and traffic, Elena lay awake in the hospital bed, her mind a whirl of anger, fear, and something dangerously close to hope. Adrian sat in the chair beside her, still in his tuxedo, unwilling to leave. Neither of them spoke, and neither of them knew that someone had just taken a photograph from the hallway, a photograph of Adrian Kane holding his ex-wife's hand in the hospital bed. By morning, it would be on every news outlet in the city.